Hello, podcast family, and welcome to Regulation Revolution, where we are igniting a revolution to help the world effectively manage and respond to their emotional experiences. It's not about what happens to us, but how we react that creates harmony or chaos in our lives. Emotional regulation is a complex process involving many factors. We offer this podcast to provide insight for you about how you fine-tune and powerfully decide to transform your complex emotional states into empowered instances of self-mastery, peace, and increased awareness. Instead of having your emotions control you, you can learn to have control over your emotions. The following program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. For more information, visit us at regulationrevolution.com. Welcome to today's episode of Regulation Revolution with your co-hosts Amy Reamer and Barry Vassar, Heart and Mind. Amy is a licensed therapist, professional speaker, and teacher. Barry is a pre-licensed therapist and practice manager at Heart and Mind. To find out more about Heart and Mind, please visit heartmindrba.com. Again to Regulation Revolution. If you're joining us for the first time, I'm Barry Vassar. I'm here with Amy Reamer. We thank you for tuning in. If you're one of our regular listeners, we're glad you're staying regular with us because we are going to talk about what is regular and what is not regular when your kid starts going to preschool, when they start middle school, right in that 3 to 12 range where they're starting anything where they think they're a little too cool for school, and they might think they're a little too cool for you. If you've been with us before, or if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, go back to some of our other podcasts where we explain regulation a little bit, where we talk about regulation in the womb and that newborn to 3 age, and see what you can glean from that. And hopefully we'll get something from this too. Amy, here we are once again together.
Hey.
I think I'm fine. I'm regularly regulated. How's that?
That's good. I just thought about it. I'm wearing this shirt since we had a staff party today, but it says at the bottom, you can't see it on here, and if you're listening to a podcast, you're not gonna see it anyway. But it says I'm fine, everything is fine, and it's the like lights all over the place. So there's your. I should have worn this for our holiday episode, talking about regulation in the holidays. I'm fine, everything's fine, and the lights are all over the place. But yeah.
Well, I am so glad that this has fallen where it has as far as our topics go, because being the proud parent of both a 6-year-old and 9-year-old, not everything is fine. It's not everything is fine. And so it's funny because I said my kids were great, and then they got personalities and free will.
Yeah.
And it seems like up until 3 or thereabouts, right in there, it was all great. But then they started getting these things like ideas. They learned that they could challenge
the word no.
Yes, they learned how to use it too so well.
Mm-hmm.
So
they pick up on the curse words. They know how to use those too.
And so I was thinking for our listeners, for our viewers out there, that's the reason this topic's so perfect for tonight. I'm glad you have this one outlined for this week, because dysregulation in kids and dysregulation in parents. What does dysregulation look like from your experience in that age group, that 3 to 9, 10, 12? I mean, I know it's a broad range, but it probably looks pretty similar in some way at each age, doesn't it?
Well, I think what's happening is really similar, but I think as parents, we don't recognize it anymore. So people talk about terrible twos. There's that term now, the three-nager, when they get to be 3 and they're Mr. or Miss Independence, and, but then it's like, I think as parents, and maybe it's because of school or but the expectation when our kids get to be a certain age is that all of a sudden now they've got this fully grown owl and they're all completely regulated and we're good to go. Like I did that work for that 0 to 3, so now aren't they ready? Like they're like, they're just ready to go. So I think we have, as adults, we have an expectation. Sometimes it's a little bit high for kids to be able to regulate. They still need that help on the teeter-totter. So people remember us talking about the teeter-totter, and you were talking about how like you would scoot forward to help your daughter, balance out on the teeter-totter. Kids still need that help. But I think parents get more triggered, and you guys can give us some feedback if you agree or you disagree. I think parents get more triggered at the school age type of age, 3, 4, 5-ish, up to the 12-ish, than we do with babies. I think there's a we kind of understand they're a baby and they're learning and they're growing and this is their development, and and there's a little bit more of a understanding. We might get frustrated, we might be tired, with the babies, but I feel like in general, we lose our regulation more with older kids than we do with the babies and the toddlers. So I think that's an important part for us to talk about, is not just what it looks like with the kids, but why, as an adult, as a parent, do things like a kid telling us no send us through the roof?
Well, yeah, why is that? I was thinking about, if we're looking at the regulation, if we're looking at the teeter-totter and such, is it because of the shifts in emotions and growth of the child, like we talked about? They've learned how to say no back. They've learned how to be a little bit more defiant. Is it because we feel that our authority is being challenged? That's always been my speculation, is that all of a sudden this little thing you created that you think is going to be subservient to you and just follow your every lead, and you will always be their superhero. It's like I tell my kids, I'm the smartest, the toughest, the strongest, and the fastest. And then they learn none of that's true. So is it because our position is being challenged, or is that what you've seen? Or
I would say I think any of that. We all like to have control, and we all like to be in power, and our world is very adult dominated. And in your home, right, the adults are in charge in the home, and kids don't have a lot of power. They don't have a lot of control. So them saying no, them being defiant, that's them trying to assert their own, level of power, their own, circle of control. I think it's also, if you think about it, that, we talked about the owl is the one that holds our words. Well, the tiger now has access to a lot more vocabulary as these kids have gotten older from when they were toddlers. So when you get to that 3-ish age and up, language is a whole lot broader. And so when they do have something happen and they get triggered into that sympathetic fight-flight state, they've got access to more things. They're not just crying. They're not just throwing a tantrum. They have access to words. Now, it's very common, though, at this age, if there is any kind of a speech delay, that you will see a lot of acting out because they're frustrated, because they are feeling all these big feelings. They don't have words. They don't know how to tell you or how to show you. And so, that could be part of it too, is they don't have that ability. But I think they're able to express themselves more, just creates, like you said, it kind of challenges us, because they're not just this cute little bundle of joy anymore. And you can't just, either it's a bottle or a dry diaper or put them down to bed. You kind of have these choices, and usually one of those helps to regulate them and get them, calm down. Now there's, skinned knees, and they looked at me wrong, and I, failed the test, and there's like life has gotten more complicated.
How far off the mark am I when I say this? I've said it to parents before. As you know, I'm a mental health philosopher. I have these wonderful philosophies and ideas. Can't prove any of it, but I have them. And that is, you never had control to a certain degree. I tell parents quite often, you never had control. It's an illusion. You can put measures in place, go to timeout, take the TV away, take the toy away, whatever it may be, but you don't actually have control. And is it because, and I guess what I'm thinking is the younger they are, the more control you do have. You can pick up a baby.
It looks like you do.
Right. Because you can pick up the baby and put the baby where you want. You can sit the baby. You can dress the baby how you want. You can do those type things. And even going into like 2 and 3, you have to tie their shoes. You still have to help them get dressed and go through all of that. So it feels like you have more control. And then all at once, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, you realize I can't control this thing. Because I have so many parents say to me, what do I do to control them? And I respond with, you can't control them. You can influence them.
Right.
Well, I want to just that dysregulation that comes about.
That's exactly what you made me think of when you said that is, they're trying to obtain regulation by controlling things, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so if I take that away, that will get them to do what I want them to do. But if they were regulated, they would either do what you wanted them to do, or they would have a conversation and they would like talk to you about it, or, Mom, I'm really tired. Do I really need to do that tonight? Like they would be able to communicate and have their social engagement system online. Like they would be able to, not, shut down on you or be defiant. So defiance is one, showing that they are dysregulated. They want to get control. They want to have it their way. And so then what you have is the parent's tiger. It gets dysregulated because, like you said, I had this semblance of control and power, I thought. And now all of a sudden I'm losing it. And so now I'm going to do what I can to get it back. And generally a lot of our parenting strategies have been, kind of, and we talked about this earlier today, like fear is a motivator. There's no doubt about that. Fear can motivate people, but fear gets in the way of relationship, and fear can get in the way of regulation also. So we're not saying that it doesn't work, but it's usually short term. And it works a lot of times when they're more within your reach. And so when we get to the other episode, next episode, we talk about teenagers and young adults, you want your influence to go with them past your reach, because they're now going outside of your domain as they venture out into the world on their own with friends and things. So, even the elementary school, middle school-ish, they're still most of the time kind of under your power and control and choices. So, they're sort of within arm's length. But that's a good point that you made. Like, as adults, we tend to get into this, let me control this situation, let me shut this down, let me whatever, because we're starting to get dysregulated. It's a fight flight. Let me fix this. Let me stop this. Let me you make this go away. If it's loud, if it's irritating, all of that. So that's our fight flight system engaging with their fight flight system.
So do you think that sometimes we get it backwards as parents? Because I have heard parents say, and probably everybody's been in this situation, I would be all right if he or she would just settle down and be okay. And I know that I've flipped that script in my head that it's almost not the child's job to be okay. It's the parent's job to be okay. That sometimes we're looking at it like, as soon as he settles down, I would calm down. As opposed to if I could calm myself down, then they would calm down. So it's almost like it's a one-way street, really, because it's not up to the child to regulate the parent. It's up to the parent to stay regulated enough to be able to regulate the child.
Yeah, and I think our culture or society, wherever it comes from, we've been told as parents, you have this duty, or you need to do this, or you can't let them do that, or you can't allow that to happen, because that will lead to this. But if we help someone to co-regulate, then they're probably not going to lead to that. And it doesn't mean that this is they get to do whatever they want. This is what I tell parents when I'm talking about play therapy or whatever. I'm not talking about a free for all that you know. I know there's a thing that's free range parenting or, you know, that kind of thing. This isn't a free for all that kids just get to do whatever they want. There's still boundaries. There's still rules. There's still consequences if they break a rule. But one of the trainings I did, there was an article that I used, and I love the term she used, which was neuro-aligned parenting. So it's basically where is their brain, and that's what you line up with. In order to parent them. You can't, if you give a kid a consequence when their tiger is fully awake, again, hippo's under the water, owl flew away, they're not going to hear you, they're not going to learn the lesson. I mean, think about it yourself. If you think about when you got in trouble as a kid, can you actually remember what it was you did to get in trouble? Or what was the lesson that they were trying to teach you?
No earthly idea. As an adult, I still don't get it.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier today, like natural consequences. Like my grandparents had a farm, and they had, you know, like a low level electric fence, you know, running along the field. Well, as a kid, you just like, wonder what'll happen if I grab that. You grab it, it hurts. You don't grab it again. That's called natural consequences.
Right.
I learned a lesson. I remember that. And so, but it wasn't necessarily because of the physical pain. It was a combination of, I just decided to do that. That was dumb. And yes, it hurt. And so then I didn't do it again. And so, but that doesn't mean that we have to hurt someone to make them learn a lesson. You know, I didn't even get a chance to go into fight because it was so fast, you know, grabbing that and then whoop. You know, so I think what we have to do is we have to realize that if we can help people to regulate, then they're going to learn how to make better decisions, and they're going to learn how to calm themselves down so they don't do something impulsive. Like if people recall from another episode, we talked about Barry kicking tires, and I said it might sound like you're kind of out of control, but you're really not, because you made a conscious decision to kick something that wasn't going to get broken, that you're not that is likely to hurt yourself. You're not going to pay money, you know. So your owl was there enough to make a decision of what to do with all that energy, that fight energy or whatever that you have. So that's what you want. I would think everybody wants that for their kids, right? Is that they can handle themselves. They can make good decisions. If faced with a stressful or a crisis situation, that they're going to be able to manage it and make it through it okay, right? That's true resilience, you know, is being able to do that. So if we really want our kids to be resilient, if we really want our kids to have, what was one of those things on the socks today at our staff party, grit. We want them to have grit, you know, then they've got to be able to manage some stressors. So this isn't a free for all, just let your kids do whatever. This is just about how do you get them regulated when they need it.
But on that regulation piece, it sounds like it does start, not end with, but it does start with the parent piece of it. That if you are regulated, then, and I'm trying to tie this together a little bit, if you are regulated and calm in your nervous system, then you know when you are becoming dysregulated, because you'll know what it feels like. But you'll also know when your child is dysregulated. So I feel like the key still comes back to the regulation of the parent, that if you're in that place where you're calm, where your nervous system is settled, then if something sets it off, you can recognize it because you know the difference. And if the child's going off, you're in a regulated place already. And so not slipping to that fight or flight yourself, being able to. So that's why I guess I'm going back to the whole, you know, what does dysregulation look like in parents? You know, what you brought up earlier on in this episode. You know, what does that look like? Is that the parent that feels the need to control more? Is that the parent that feels the need to, I've watched parents do it, and probably every parent no, I can't say that. Probably lots of parents. I've watched them in the shouting matches with a 5-year-old, trying to outshout the 5-year-old. It's like, I've watched and I'm like, which one of you is trying to have the bigger tantrum right now?
Yeah.
It's like, how can you get the child back into regulation if you can't keep your cookies together?
Yeah. Well, and I think, that makes me think about our child getting dysregulated is not a reflection of us as a parent. Mm-hmm. And too many people don't know that. Mm-hmm. We think my kid's messing up, my kid's losing it. My kid threw a toy at their brother. That's not right. That's not good. And too many of us also project. I think what we could do, we could literally like sit here and just start listing things that trigger parents, right? Like, my kid's gonna, he threw a toy at his brother. Oh my God, he's gonna commit assault and he's gonna go to jail for the rest of his life. I have literally heard parents say that about like a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, no, that's not going to happen because like this doesn't, set in. But that's right. That's their tiger saying, you need to step in and change this. You need to fix this. You need to teach them. You need to teach them a lesson, where they're going to end up. Our fears, our worries for our kids so get in the way because we get dysregulated. We go to like I call it, the land of what ifs. Our brain goes to the land of what ifs. What if I don't tell him not to do that, and then he becomes a serial killer?
All right.
What? So we project into the future so much because we want what's best for our kids, and we feel this horrible responsibility to do everything right, for our kids, and so not recognizing that 99% of their dysregulation is very much normal development. It is them growing, them learning. I saw a thing about like, kind of the stubborn, talking back kid is gonna, be a leader in life. And if they don't get that tiger caged up, from being shut down. So if you want your kid to have a voice, if you want your kid to be able to be strong and speak up for themselves, why do you want them to do that everywhere but with you?
Good point.
I did a little activity one time when I was doing intensive in-home and with a family, and they had a little girl who was 5. They were adopting, and I saw a lot of this with them just projecting into the future of how her behaviors at 5 were going to lead to this and lead to that, and so I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And so I just came up with it on the cuff. I don't know that it's a real intervention. Couldn't even tell you what theory it goes under. Maybe my mental health philosopher can help me with that. But I had carried around a little small travel size dry erase board with me when I did it at home. And I brought that in and I said, all right, we're going to project into the future. It's her college graduation. And one of her professors comes up to you and says, oh, and I'll make up a name, Susie. You're Susie's parents. Oh my gosh, Susie is what? What do you want to hear from this professor of what they think about her? Write it down. So they've listed, oh, she's so smart, she's so kind, she's so thoughtful, all of these things that, they would love to hear, some third party say about their child's, 10 and 15 years down the road. Mm-hmm. And I said, how do they get taught that? Because they didn't say anywhere on there about anything other than the kind of person they were. Kind, loving, smart, hard worker, all of these things. And I'm like, they learn that through that, watching you, finding out what it's like to be that kind of person. When they get treated that way themselves and they want to turn around and treat others like that. So what they also realized was all of the things they were focused on that they were worried about really had nothing to do with what they wanted as an outcome for their child. They were so focused on their fears and so worried about the behaviors, and also not recognizing that their dysregulation was turning them into people that are not going to be the kind of people that the professor's going to say something really nice about. So it really helped them, I think, to see that they needed to pay attention to their own regulation. They needed to pay attention to their own behavior and not worry and project fears into the future for this child. Regulate them right now. Build their foundation. I always say this, I may have said it in one of the other episodes, but when someone is drowning, that's not when you teach them how to swim.
Right.
You save them. You help them, you save them, and then maybe later you go get lessons. But you're not going to start yelling instructions to them about how to swim when they're drowning. You simply save them. And so if you think of dysregulation as a drowning, how do I save them right now? How do I get them out of the deep end? How do I get them out of danger? And then we can breathe. And then later we can talk about what to do next time. We try too hard to teach lessons when kids are dysregulated. We ask too many questions. We try to teach lessons when they're dysregulated. And that's our fight part, right? Well, I need to teach them. I need to show them. They're going to get in trouble. They're going to fail. They're going to be this. They're going to be that. I've got to do it. And so we're rushing to meet our own nervous system's need for things to be calmed down and to be good and to be right and to teach that lesson so it doesn't happen again. And so we're paying more attention to our nervous system, but it's controlling us instead of us controlling it.
Gotcha. Well, that's it. I was thinking about that when it comes to kids and when it comes to parents and that projection piece and that regulation piece. A lot of times it seems like it's something internal with the parent themselves that they're seeing in the child that's a reflection of them. It's kind of like that old thing that, we've talked about with couples and with everything else. Usually what triggers us is when we see somebody acting the way we act. And so how many times do parents see their child acting a certain way, reminds them of, well, that's the way I was, and I know what I did. My favorite one is when it's blame the other parent. As I do a set of parents one time, just in personal life, and just having a conversation with them, the wife was saying that I'm fine with my son until he starts acting like his dad. And then the husband was saying, yeah, I get along with my son all the time, but I swear my daughter is just like my wife. And it's like, so what you're getting triggered with is something that somebody else triggers you with, but you see this quality. And I think sometimes maybe that's what it is, that we hone in on that one maladaptive action or behavior that doesn't set well with us. And all of a sudden, this child becomes all of our worst fears, all of our worst nightmares, and our arch enemy in that moment, threatening our peace. Because it is, when somebody is dysregulated, if you and I are in the office together, or if there's a bunch of us in the office together, and one person is upset, crying, or having a temper tantrum, maybe, who knows? Their dysregulation just messed with my regulation. And so, the natural response is, I want to quiet that down. What can I do to calm you down as quickly as possible? And it's not because you're necessarily doing anything wrong. And so I wonder sometimes as parents, and that regulation cycle, I guess you could call it, is that, are you upset with the child, not because what they did was such a bad thing, but you're upset with them because it upset your regulation? And it's really you who are dysregulated, because you said some of these behaviors we see in children, 3, 6, 9, 12, 8, are typical developmental behaviors, the no, the defiance. Are they really doing anything wrong? So maybe they're not even dysregulated, but what they did is triggering you, the parent.
Yeah. Like you said, they're stepping over our piece, or we've got to get somewhere and we need the shoes on, and they're not putting the shoes on, and we're going to be late. And if I'm late, that means this, and so we have a lot of self-talk going on in our heads, about what we should be doing, what a family should be doing, what we should look like, all of that. So I always talk about how the neuroscience, you have to sort of, my brain geekiness is you got to learn how to use it for good and not evil. And our brains are so wired towards the negative because our tiger wants to keep us safe. And so it doesn't care about all the fun, lovey-dovey stuff because that's not going to kill us. And so it worries about the negative stuff. So rather than say, I saw a graphic that someone had made on Facebook, and I can't give them credit because I don't have it in front of me, but they basically were giving you things to self-talk when your child is dysregulated. Like, my child's not doing this on purpose. It is not my failure that's causing this. Those types of little, because we do negative self-talk in our heads all the time.
Right.
So we have to be more intentional about doing things the other way. And so, told us things, attention is the big thing that people go, oh, they're just looking for attention. They're just seeking attention. And my first thought of that, honestly, and I've had this thought for a long time, even when I worked in daycare and stuff like that. And I'm like, why is that a bad thing? Like, people say that like it's a negative that a child is looking for attention. Well, everybody wants attention. I look to my husband for attention. Like, everybody wants attention. So why are we framing that as a bad thing? But if that has a negative connotation, then let's say they're looking for connection. They're looking for regulation. This is what they're looking for. And I think, like you said, sometimes we're in the middle of our own thing and we don't want to have our peace disturbed. Sometimes we think like, oh my God, this is going to send me so off track and then I'll be behind an hour and then I got this to do and I've got that to do. And in reality, if we gave the kid 30 seconds of connection, they'd probably be fine and go on and go. And you can get back to what you're doing. But if you can probably fight with them to not have connection longer than it is to actually just go ahead and give them some of that connection.
Well, yeah. I mean, the argument over put your shoes on if you're going to run out to the car to grab your lunchbox, it costs us 40 degrees outside, will last longer if you let them walk the 10 feet to the car, freeze their feet off, and come back in. It's, what are you fighting over? So if we had to, dysregulation in parents, what does that look like? If we encapsulated that so that our listeners and our viewers would say, okay, like almost like a little checklist. If I experience this, I might be dysregulated. Who was it? The comedian Jeff Foxworthy years ago said you might be a redneck.
A redneck. Yeah.
Okay. You might be
dysregulated. Yeah.
There you go. You might be dysregulated if, and I would say like one thing I would put out there.
If you're trying to out-yell a 5-year-old.
Yes, if you're trying to out-yell your 5-year-old, you might be dysregulated. If you feel you need to dominate or take control, you might be dysregulated.
Yeah.
That's all right. What would you add to that list?
And I will use our lovely business coach Caroline's phrase she used the other day, and I don't know if she got it from someone else or not, but if you have a bowling ball response to a softball stimulus,
you might be dysregulated.
And you might be dysregulated. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go like a self-check.
Yeah. And if you're more, I would say if you're more worried about what others think about your child than what you're thinking about your child, you might be dysregulated.
You might be dysregulated. All right. Yeah. So if we flip that over, because we're talking about the different ages, and you're way better at the age ranges than I am. So dysregulation in a 3 or 4-year-old or 5-year-old, would that look similar for those ages at 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, I think so.
So what would be an indicator if I had a 4-year-old? Now we know the temper tantrum. We see that one as an obvious one, that there's something going on.
I think
what are some of the ones that we might not see?
once they get words, it's still a tantrum, but it becomes a more verbal. So the whining, oh my gosh, whining, I think is a really big 3, 4, 5-year-old thing.
So that would be a sign of dysregulation. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just whining, trying to get what they want. They're getting smarter. So there might be some of that negotiation going on. To eat 2 bites of this and you can have that. And they might try to move around that. Because again, we got to make sure they eat their fruits and their vegetables and all that. And if I don't get them to eat their fruits and vegetables, I'm not a good parent. And so I'm going to make sure that they get those. And I tell you, one of my kids was, he never had an ounce of fat on him as a baby. And, which was odd, obviously, because usually babies are kind of roly-poly. Mm-hmm. And so the pediatrician ran some tests just to figure out there was something else going on. And then when he couldn't find anything, he sent us over to Children's Hospital to get some more tests done. They ran a bunch of tests. This was the conclusion of all these tests that all these doctors ran. He's small. Let him eat whatever he wants. She was like, yeah, give him the green beans, but if he doesn't eat them, don't worry about it. Let him have the chocolate. Like literally, it was just to get some calories in it. However he'll do it. So, I'm not advocating obviously to just let kids eat whatever they want. We obviously got to have a balance. But she's like, give him his vitamins, and that'll probably cover most of the good stuff. And and then just not what she basically was saying to me was, don't stress too much. Like there's nothing major going on here. He's just small. It's just part of his genetic makeup. Kids are typically, when they're hungry, they're going to eat. They tend to be more grazers, that kind of thing sometimes. So they're might not sit down and eat a full plate. But we stressed way too much about fitting our kids into boxes that, maybe some author put out there, or our parents put out there, our in-laws put out there, like that if you were a good parent, your kid would do X. If you were a good parent, you would give your kid X. There's a lot of stress out there for that.
That's a cultural, societal influence that you have in there as well. That comes in that, good parents don't do this, if your child was well behaved, they would look like this instead of like this. The whole list goes on. And it's funny because it's like so many folks out there, and maybe every parent in some way has got to be influenced by it, looks at the judgment, looks at the opinion, looks at whatever the norm is in society and says, this must be the way my child is supposed to be. And when my child doesn't fit that goes back to the parents' dysregulation, because they're not fitting that cookie cutter mold that the world is looking for. I can remember when my still littles were littler. I'm like, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old in a dress swinging on a swing with her diaper on is fine. But all of a sudden now you've got to wear leggings. You got to make sure you got your undies on. This was a change in the world for her. just that. But it's like, I've told my kids, I was like, kids, we don't pee outside. Got it? But we live in the country. And I find myself changing the rules midstream. I'm like, okay, you're in the backwoods of 6 acres. Go ahead and pee outside. But daggone it, don't walk out of Applebee's and pee in the parking lot. And so I'm wondering, sometimes, we're sending that mixed message a little bit of this is okay at home, but don't do this here. And so the only reason you can't do it here is because it's not accepted here. And so we become dysregulated over stuff that we've taught the kids they were okay to do.
Yeah. I mean, I remember thinking about that with language. there's an old stand-up of Eddie Murphy and talking about how forever, like he thought his name was Damn It and his brother's name was Jesus.
Right.
Like there's, because that's what the parents would call him. And so often, like, we curse, we might use a curse word in our home. Some people do, some people don't. And then when a kid uses it, it's like it's the end of the world, and they've murdered somebody and then it's like 2 seconds ago the parent used that word. So you shared about how your wife taught your kids about with words, like that it can be, what is it, spicy or poisonous.
Right. They were spicy or poisonous or spicy or deadly. So if you said something like, what the hell was that? Then it was a spicy word. If you told somebody, go to hell, now it's a poisonous word.
Right.
But in that vein.
I absolutely love that. Because I think what it says is, and again, everybody gets to set their own rules. If a word's not acceptable in your household, I don't think it really should be acceptable for anybody.
Right.
But if you're going to use those words, don't be surprised when they come out of your kid's mouth.
Exactly.
And I love how your wife explained to your girls that it's not really about the word itself, it's how you use it. And I've said that with kids, it's where you use it. Like you said, like you might could pee in the woods at home, but you can't go pee in the parking lot at Applebee's. So you might drop an F-bomb at home, but if you drop an F-bomb in the middle of church, it probably ain't going to go over so well. You might get in trouble. So it's not really the F-bomb that's the problem. It's the judgment and where you use it, how you use it, with whom you use it, like all of that. So, I think we don't give kids enough credit to understand these concepts, right? And I thought that spicy versus poisonous or whatever is fantastic. And so kids can understand that as young as 4 and 5. They can understand that. They can get that. I think Mr. Rogers was kind of the best with this. And anybody knows me, they know I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan. And I think the thing that I loved about Mr. Rogers the most, because sometimes when I was a kid, I didn't watch his show much because it was slow and I would get bored. I think as I got a little bit older. But as I'm becoming an adult, and I think back to what I enjoyed about that show and the messages that I got from that show, he treated kids with respect, that they were smart and capable, and that they could understand if you take the time to explain things to him. They can understand. And I think, unfortunately, as adults, sometimes we rely on the because I said so, or because that's the way it is, way too often. And if we let kids know the why behind what we're telling them they can or can't do, then they'll get it.
Makes sense.
Some kids are going to get it when you tell them. Some kids are going to have to stick the fork in the outlet, and and then they won't do it again. I mean, that's, experiential learner, right? Versus auditory learner. But, give your kids the benefit of the doubt that they can understand what you're talking about and that they can get it. Take that time. Because that shows them respect. Kids don't get a lot of respect in the world. They're kind of the low on the totem pole of life.
You just tripped something in me that I hate to backtrack, but I've got to. I'll circle back on something. Going into that philosophy, I wonder sometimes if the dysregulation we experience as parents, we've talked about authority, we've talked about control, we're talking about societal norms and culture and such. But I wonder if it boils down to you're becoming an option. And the reason I say that, which seems like a soft topic, but I'll show you where I'm going to break it back in, is that as you were talking, it's not the fact that your 6-year-old said whatever cuss word they said. What it is that your 6-year-old is now old enough or older and can say the cuss word. It's a sign they're growing up. It's a sign they're outgrowing you. And then I thought about when they start telling you no and they start expressing their own personality, it's a sign that they are outgrowing you. So, you think about, this is such an important age because you think about from birth up into 2 or 3, we go back to that. I, as a parent, am not an option. I am a mandate. You're not going to eat without me. You're not going to get dressed without me. You're not going to get bathed without me. You're not going to go any place without me. But then when you start preschool, you're 4, you're 5, you're going into kindergarten, got your own little personality, you could tie your own shoes. I wonder if parents become threatened internally in some way in their nervous system with my baby boy, my baby girl is growing up. So really that
lost.
Yeah, that we're experiencing this loss of our child because then they become teenagers. And I don't want to stereotype, but daggone it, it's in my nature. When teenagers, when they hit their 14, 15, 16, dating age, driving age, sports age, mom and dad are an option. It's no sitting around playing Uno with them. It's no go to Shoney's with them. Gosh, I'm dating myself. You become so from the moment they start showing that defiance, or even that opinion, or whatever it is, or that first cuss word, that is the sign that they are now leaving you. So it might start for some parents at 2-year-olds, but for others it might not start until they're 7 or 8. Depending on the child. But I wonder if that's really what our threat response is my baby boy, girl, whomever. Wow, they're growing up. They're leaving me. And I wonder if sometimes that need to come in and say, no, you can't do it. The old adage of the old saying,
take it back that power.
Because I said so, right? At the end of the day, it's because I said so, because I'm your parent. That only flies until they're about 18, if you're lucky. And then because I said so means nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm just, all right. So that's just food for thought out there. How much of it is about us losing that influence?
Well, and you're right. I think that one, it can trigger loss, like you said, sort of grief of each passing phase, like that our children go through. And I know you have more than one child, so anybody who has more than one child will know that no 2 kids are alike. So, just because you went through it with this one, it'll be different with this one, or the timeline will be different, or the needs will be different. Some need you to be firmer, some need you to be softer. Like there's a different level of need. And I'll go back to saying this because I've said it in the earlier ones, because I tried to let people know that we're not saying that there's one right way to do this. There's a good enough way. And I'll say that thought led me to the whole repair piece, that's the piece that if we can hang on to that, where if we lose our own regulation, if we got into that screaming match with our 5-year-old, it's not the end of the world. We have not doomed them to a life of horrible nature because we got into a fighting, screaming match with our 5-year-old. But once we calm down and our tiger sort of gets back to normal and our owl comes back and hippo comes back up, we need to own that with our kid and say, Mama really lost it there and got into that screaming match with you, and that was really not something I should have done. I am so sorry. Let's revisit that question you had again, and let's talk about it. When you talk about visuals, I have in a training that I've done, I use a visual of like a little dog pulling on a rope, like I love to play the tug of war with the rope, right? Mm-hmm. Well, with parents, what we tend to do when we get into that tug of war, whether that's a defiance thing or a no or whatever is going on, we tend to either pull harder on the rope or we just give up and let go of the rope and let them have whatever they want and give in. So what can we do to not do one of those two things? How can we actually both come in with the rope as opposed to both people pulling? I hadn't thought about this before, but I think about the teeter-totter. You know how you say you scooch closer on the teeter-totter to equal it out? Well, what if we kind of walked our hands up the rope to get closer to them, as opposed to pulling, or as opposed to just dropping the rope and leaving them on their own? It's something to think about. But that's what happens is the power struggle. Is we get into that power struggle because we want to be in control as much as they want to be in control. But control isn't going to lead to regulation. Control just leads to more dysregulation.
So what you got in there, those few little, you might be dysregulated ifs when it comes to control. You find yourself in a shout match with your 5-year-old. If you've got a bowling ball reaction, we got those. We've got over here dysregulation in the kids, kind of how it's spotted. It might be whininess. It might be defiance. It could be shutting down, depending on how bad they're regulated. That
could be the dropping of the rope too. If we go into dorsal, we go shut ourselves in the bathroom while they're out in the hall kicking and screaming. We've either fled from a situation or we've shut down, which is not good either because they don't know how to regulate quite yet and they need help.
Well, and touching in with you had mentioned earlier, the self-talk piece of things for parents to kind of do. You know, one of those things to add in there, since we did talk about a little bit, is this about my issue or their issue? There's something to stop and say, is this an issue I'm having? Are they really doing anything wrong, or is this my issue? And then you made me think of it in that power struggle piece of things. You know, what is my need? Why do I need to control this situation? Is something to throw in there as well. And then there was one other little thought that I had in there about it. Can't think about it. In the service of the relationship is what I'm about to do with the child in the service of the relationship. And so I'm trying to think of the different self-talks as you're getting ready, as you feel yourself rising up a little bit, becoming dysregulated with this child, whose job it is for you to help to regulate. So when you start seeing it in yourself, seeing it in them, those tips that you can kind of use, is this a society issue? Am I only upset about this because I'm worried that Uncle Ed is going to say something about it at the Thanksgiving table? You know, I'm trying to think of the different tips we can give to parents. Like if we were at home right now and my child, you know, sat down in the middle of the floor and I would have sat down next to him and said, okay, let's talk about it. Then why am I in the middle of Walmart when he sits down in the middle of the floor, grabbing him by the hand, trying to drag him out the store? Because I don't want anybody to think I'm a bad parent. I want to show them that I'm actually controlling this child. But if I were at home, I might have sat down beside him, put my arm around him and said, well, tell me about it, buddy. Tell me about little one. But you put me in the middle of the ball, you know, so I guess those different things is, I don't know. I'm just trying to give our listeners and viewers some sort of checklist to go through.
I know everybody has experienced all of this. And again, you're not going to be able to be 100% on with your kids. You're not going to be able to read their cues. In Circle of Security, we talk about kids miscuing when they need something, but they act like they don't. And so then we're like, oh, okay, they don't need me right now. And they, you know, they push you away. That's a miscue because if they're dysregulated, they probably still want you close. It doesn't mean you have to pick them up or squeeze them tight or whatever, but you know, you can stay close and not, if you know they're upset, then they might need your help. You can stay present. When my daughter first came here from Nicaragua, she was 7, and when she would melt down, you know, it was like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. She would be on the floor, legs and arms flailing. And I was not a therapist at the time. I had read a few books about adoption. That was about it. I'd had my boys. So I'd been a parent, but I had not, you know, dealt with this level of dysregulation at that age. I had dealt with 2-year-old tantrums. I had not dealt with 7-year-old tantrums. And so I literally, this was my little kind of process of elimination, was trying to see what worked. And literally it was the volume of her screaming that told me whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing. So like if I'll be like, okay, she wants to be left alone, I go out the door. She would scream louder. Okay, she doesn't want me to go out the door. I'll try to hug her. Oh no, that does not work either. She does not want me to touch her. That's too close. So I literally ended up finding out probably about 3 or 4 feet away, sitting on the floor and talking to myself, would work. Because just like we said in one of the other episodes, and I'll credit her again, as Robin Goebel said, it's our job to offer them safety. It's their nervous system's job to decide whether it wants to accept it or not. And here we have a child who had been in an orphanage for several years, had not had much co-regulation from adults at all. And so even though I was trying to offer safety, I was trying to offer nurture, I was trying to offer these things, those things were foreign to her and did not feel good. But she also, I think, knew her nervous system didn't want to be alone. So that's why she'd scream louder when I would leave. What I know now is that I was actually regulating myself by sitting there and talking to myself. Well, your brothers are little, I would hold them, and it makes me so sad that you won't let me hold you. I would rock them. And I literally was just talking to myself. It wasn't, she didn't hear what I was saying. None of that made a difference. But what I found out is the more I ended up regulating myself and not losing it, because, I would get, oh, fine, just sit here and scream, like I would get upset, I would get frustrated. But that didn't fix it either, right? Like I don't care if you're male, female, I know everybody talks about male. Everybody wants things to be fixed. If you're dysregulated, you want it to be fixed. And so with her being so dysregulated, my nervous system was getting dysregulated and didn't want it to continue, right? We want it to stop. And what I realized in that time was I didn't have any power over it stopping. All I could do was offer what I could offer and be there. And she would eventually calm down, and we got into a routine. And when she would get calmed down enough, we would go snuggle on the couch, turn the TV on, watch a little TV, snuggling, until we settled back down and then go back to bed. And then she would go back to bed and be able to sleep. So, and can't even tell you I don't know if she can or not herself, but what those meltdowns were about, right? That we don't know. And so a lot of them, I think, were at night. She didn't like to be alone. And so she was scared. And so, we had tried all kinds of different things, but, in my head, 7-year-olds should be able to sleep in their room by themselves. My boys are sleeping at 7 by themselves. I wasn't thinking about the fact that this is a child who probably, never even been in a room sleeping by herself. She lived in an orphanage. So she had bodies and people and noises like around her whole life. So to be in a big bedroom and a big twin bed and everything all by herself was a foreign world. And so, I'd lay down beside her till she'd go to sleep. And even when I was in Nicaragua with her, we slept in the same bed together in Nicaragua. So when we came here to the United States, though, here the kids have their own room. And so I'm not having to share a bedroom and not having to share a bed. And, and so, I was ready to get back to my normal. She was not ready because it wasn't normal for her. So, but over time, me learning, and believe me, I had tons of moments of my own dysregulation. My husband and I would tag team, that's how we joke about his name became Somebody, because I'd be like, somebody needs to come help her. And he was like, oh, that's me. And so you can do that too. If one parent gets dysregulated, or feels it coming and you can't control it, tag out and let the person that it's fresh and isn't tired, come in and take over if your child's really struggling for a certain amount of time.
So is it fair to say, I know we're kind of coming to the end here, and I'm just taking it in myself. Is it fair to say that the statement is true about put the oxygen on your mask on yourself first, when it comes to trying to help us, and one of those things we wanted to offer during this episode was, how to help regulate your child when they're dysregulated. So it sounds like step one is to get yourself regulated, which that might mean that you're the one that needs to leave the room and go put yourself in timeout for a few minutes. Or maybe you're the one that needs to walk out on the front porch and take a breather or go get the glass of water instead of calming them down. So step one would be regulate yourself. But because children are so unique and each one is so different, just based on the story you shared with your daughter, it might be a trial and error experience for each parent who is listening and watching and everything else to figure out, because sometimes the child cannot communicate what they need to be okay. If you and I were in a situation, I looked at you and said, Amy, you're upset. You said, Barry, I am upset. I could look at you and say, what do you need to be okay? And at the very least, you could probably say, either leave me alone or sit here quietly or just talk to me. You could probably give me that much. With a child, you might not get that much. So for parents listening and viewing, I think it is fair to say, if you can't calm them down right away, first check and see, are you calm? And then second, don't kick yourself, because it is a trial and error experience. What works, like you said, Amy, we don't have a cure-all. One way is a right way and one is not when we're doing these episodes. It's going to have to be what works for your child. Some children, it might be they want you to sit right next to them. It might be the snuggle. For some, they might need you to leave the room to calm down. One of the best, I'll be quiet after this, and one of the best moments came from one of my kids. I won't say which one it was, but it entertained me, and it will always entertain me. They, not even identifying the gender of my child, had a moment where they looked at me and said, I am mad at you right now, and I'm going to go to my room, and I'm going to play by myself, and I'm not going to talk to you. And I literally went, thank God. I was like, you just put yourself in the timeout I would have sent you to. Okay. So what do you need? And so I don't want parents listening and viewing to beat yourselves up. You might not figure it out right off the bat. When it's a baby, Amy, you said it right. When we're talking a baby, it's feed me, hold me, put me down to sleep, change my diaper. As they're in this age group, I don't know what it might be. And only you as a parent will have to take the time to discover it. Regulate yourself first, and then you'll probably be able to see what they need. And if your child is a 9 or 10-year-old, they may be able to tell you. Like Amy, I think you said, they've got an increased vocabulary. They may be able to look at you and say, what I need to do is go scream in my pillow and punch my mattress. Okay. It's not going to hurt the pillow or the mattress. Knock yourself out.
So we might need to make a note that we probably want to do an episode talking about tiger taming drills, because that's what I have.
Tiger taming drills.
Tiger taming drills. Yes. Because what that is this is a process of figuring out what works. So I'll give a brief description of what it is. I talk about how, we have fire drills in school, right? Everybody learns where to line up, what door to go out, where to stand, follow the teacher, all that when you have a fire drill. Dysregulation happens in a school way more often than a fire does, but nobody practices for dysregulation. And so that's what tiger taming drills are about. And it's also about figuring out for your kid. If your kids, if they have more fight energy, then you got to figure out a fight thing to do that works for their body. That's why I said you can't say do this, because if they're in a fight space, then they need to do this. And I'll give a quick example with a client who recently, a teenager that left the home on foot. And the parent was worried about them, went and got in the car, riding around the neighborhood, came close to calling the police until they finally spotted him. And they begrudgingly got in the car and came home. And so we talked about, so he had flight energy. He needed to get away. He needed some space. He needed to think. Well, mom's tiger woke up because she's worried about the kid, his safety. It's nighttime. Where is he at? What's he doing? And so we had to come up with a plan. If that happens again, your nervous system says, I need some space. I need to get out of here. Do we have a space? What about your backyard? Is there somewhere in your backyard you could go? And yeah, but she was just come out here. And I said, well, we're going to talk to mom. We're going to make a plan. If mom can see you from the window, she won't need to come out there because she'll know you're okay. She'll know you're safe. Her tiger will be calm because she'll know that you're okay and you're safe. So that's what tiger training drills is all about, is working together with your child when the owl is present, when the hippo is up out of the water, to figure it out. Now, when you first start talking about it, they're going to think you're crazy because it's like, I'm not mad right now. Why do we need to talk about this? Mm-hmm. But that's what you got to do, is you got to plan. It's just like why police and military train over and over and over again when they're all in a good mindset, so that when the emergency happens, when the crisis happens, wham, they can go back and revert to what they trained and what they learned to do. It's the same concept. But it's not as easy because you have to work with your child about what works and also where they're at, because it depends on that neuro-aligned discipline. A fight response, sympathetic response may be different than a shutdown, collapsed dorsal response, and what they might need during that time. Circle of security languages, they're at the bottom. When they're at the top of the circle, they need parents to do this. When they're at the bottom of the circle, you might need to do this for this. So there are some different methods to be thinking about that. I know we've talked about some, so I like to recommend books for parents, like Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson's Whole Brain Child, which that was one of their first ones that came out, and it is aimed kind of a little bit sort of like the younger age, but it can be applied to older, and I like it because it gives parents scenarios and examples. Like they have name it to tame it, things like that. So, that's one of the really good ones out there. Brain Body Parenting by Dr. Mona Delahook is fantastic. So that's, again, understanding the nervous system and the body and what we can do. So those are some good ones. People want other, more highly decorated letter behind their names people to read their stuff. But these are the folks that get it, with the nervous systems and the interplay between nervous systems with parents and children.
We've got a lot to talk about in the weeks to come. I like that, though. I did write it down. Tiger taming drills. That is going to be an episode. So folks listening, watching, stay tuned for when we have that one, because I know that's going to be something to really hit home with everybody. Amy, we're going to pick back up again next week and roll of the dice on what we're talking about. Do we have a plan yet?
Well, we're going to have our last sort of age group, teenagers, young adults, parenting teenagers, young adults, what that looks like, what's dysregulation look like. If you had a teenager, you probably got a good idea what that looks like, but recognizing they still need co-regulation. That owl's not fully developed till 25. So they still need, they may act like they don't like us and they don't want us around, but they do still need us. And so just maintaining our own regulation through all that. But that's that we have that one, and then we'll throw out others. Hopefully by that time we'll also maybe get some ideas from listeners and viewers if they want us to expand on a particular topic or a particular question. I know how you are. One question somebody asked might have a whole episode based on that one question. So
absolutely. And I've already titled the next one.
Going.
I've already titled the next one "Terrible Teens," so it's in my hand. All right, so whether you've got a teen or whether you've got a brand new baby, you're eventually going to have a teen. You need to tune in next week because you're going to need this at some point in time. Amy, thanks again. We get to hang out together. Listeners, viewers, thanks again, and we will talk at you in another week.
Yeah, if you need to find out about when the next is coming out, sign up at regulationrevolution.com.
Ah, I forgot the website plug. regulationrevolution.com. That's right. Woo.
All right.
Have a good one, Irving. Bye. Following program includes stories and situations that are not intended to identify any client or individual. Any similarities are coincidental and should not be considered reflective of any one person or group of people. The preceding program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. If you or someone you know is in need of counseling services and reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia, please visit us at heartmindrba.com for more information.